How's it going, guys? It's your boy Arknys. Today I'm going to be giving you a tutorial on the refueling cycle guide process for the White Ridge Nuclear Facility. I'm going to be showing you all the different systems in place that are going to allow you to do your job, including the polar crane operation, the containment fuel handling platform operation, and then last but not least, the spent fuel pool fuel handling platform operation. I know that's a handful to say, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, step one's going to be to enter this little tunnel here, and you're going to run on in here. You're going to need to make sure you joined the group previously and have an ID badge. And then you're going to go ahead and scan yourself through the turnstile here. After that, we're going to come over here. This is where you're going to be clocking in and out for your service to get promotions. So you need a set amount of hours to get a promotion, and you need to manually clock in before it'll start recording your hours. So we're going to go ahead and clock in here. You can see it says I'm clocked out. Now it says status clocked in. And you can see also on the leaderboard, now my shift hours are going up. And of course, when we clock out, my total hours will go up as well. Next step, we're going to go ahead and open up the main blast door right here so that we can get access to the facility. This is called the Containment Access Corridor Vault. Go ahead and open that on up. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and run on down this long hallway. All right, your next step, you're going to have to open the Phase 1 hatch. All right, now that your Phase 1 hatch is open, we're going to go ahead and open up the Phase 2 hatch. And opening up this secondary hatch is going to actually give us access to the facility. All right, now that we have access to the actual facility, we're going to go ahead and close up that hatch. Alrighty, our secondary hatch is fully closed. So because this is a new server, what's currently the status would be we have spent fuel rods and we need to go ahead and extract them and replace them with fresh fuel rods. So I will be giving you this tutorial start to finish on how to accomplish this task, which is a very lengthy one. So first, what we're going to need to do is disengage all the seismic restraints. There are 4 of them. Alrighty. Next, we're going to go ahead and flip all of our bridge control switches. Raise them up so we disconnect them. Alright. Now that we have removed all of our seismic braces and raised up all 3 of our connecting bridges, we're going to be going to our crane operations. That is going to be the first process, and moving and removing those spent fuel rods. We're going to have to go ahead and climb up here, which can sometimes be a little finicky. Alrighty. Once you're at the top, you're going to go ahead and take a seat inside the crane. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and go over to our programs. This displays all of the programmable, executionable, positioning, executables, local controls, and remote programs for this set of gear, which this is the polar crane. That is the nomenclature for this set of gear. So, per the guide, we're going to be following it in order to accomplish the task of refueling. We're going to go ahead and start with step 1, which is going to be RPV IHA. You can see when you input and hit run, it'll tell you input accepted, and then your crane will start moving to the predetermined X, Y, and Z coordinates. All right. Once it's returned to standby, program is standby, and position is where you previously assigned it, you're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. That's going to be secure load. And if you go ahead and swap seats, you'll be able to see this in action. We're going to have to continue to wait for this sequence to finish, which it says running over here, and it continues to say our program, but now it also says the load in tonnage. This load that we're currently moving is 250 tons. All right, now we're back in standby. We have our load secured. We're gonna go and move our crane position. So we're gonna be moving to the IHA boot. All right, now that we're in standby position, we can go ahead and release the load that we are currently trying to move. All right, back in standby now. We're going to move on to our next instruction, which is moving over to the shield slot. We're going to be picking up and removing the shield. All right, now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and secure our load once again. All right, we're going to go ahead and let the crane continue picking up that shield. We're going to go ahead and come on back down here. We're going to have to open up the storage grate where the shield will be placed. So this is the reactor cavity radiation shield stowage. Go ahead and open that on up. And you can see that the crane will indeed operate on its predetermined instructions without you being present. So anytime you need to run down here and make changes while you're up there inputting commands, you can. It's just a back and forth process. All right, so go ahead and climb back on up. You can see that our crane is currently standing by for us. And then sometimes with it being in weird positions like this, it won't line up correctly, so you kind of have to do a little bit of parkour to get back onto your crane. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and move on over to the shield cavity because we have the shield in tow. Alrighty, now we're back in standby, so we're going to have to release our load. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and come back on down here once again. Alright, we're going to go ahead and stow away that shield once it finishes its full process. There we go. Alright, for the next step, we're going to have to come on over here. This is going to be our containment fuel handling platform, and we have to move this for our next crane operation. Alright, so this is our containment fuel handling platform. We're going to go ahead and move this to the yield hold position so that we can continue our crane operations. Alright, now let's head back on up to our crane. And we made it. Alrighty. So now that we have moved our shield, we're ready for the next step. We're going to go ahead and return to origin position, which is going to reset the position of the crane. This is a required step in order to move on to the next position. Alrighty, our next position is going to be the RPV IHASA, the IHASA. Alright, we're in standby. We're going to go ahead and secure load. And now you can see the core is exposed for the fuel rods. Alrighty, we are back in standby. Next, we're going to be going ahead and moving to the I has a boot position. Alrighty, back in standby, we're going to go ahead and release the load again. Alrighty, as that was our final step, we're going to go ahead and return the crane to the origin position. Now we've gained access to the spent fuel rods, which means we can proceed to the next stage of operation. We won't need to use the polar crane anymore. Instead, we're going to be going ahead and moving on to the containment fuel handling platform, which will be our next piece of gear that we're going to utilize in order to get the spent fuel out of the core. Alrighty guys, you can see I'm down here standing on the platform. This is going to be what I talked about previously, the containment fuel handling platform. Before we can do any fuel rod removal, there's a couple steps we need to do in order to prepare the structure for removing those spent fuel rods. So we're going to go ahead and ensure that we have flooded our fuel rod cavity. So currently you can see that it is on drain and we're going to have to fill it up. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and start filling the cavity with water. This is going to be a lengthy process, so just stand by while these valves open up and allow water to flood inside. Alrighty, looks like the cavity is flooded with water, so we can go ahead and move on to the next step in preparation for removing these spent fuel rods. We're going to go ahead and cross on over to the other side here. Alright, we're going to be pulling these two fuel transfer tube standby levers and the action lever as well. Go ahead and give that a second. Alrighty, then we're going to be pulling the fuel transfer tube lockout switch. These allow us to transfer spent fuel and fresh fuel rods between this room and the next room, which houses the handling platform for fuel rods. All right. We're going to go ahead and come back across the bridge. Alrighty, next we're going to be making sure that first, our conveyor, we want it to be in. That tells us that our conveyor for rods is inside the room we're currently in. So that is correct. Then we're going to go ahead and move over here. We're going to want to make sure our upender is set to up if we're going to be loading in a rod. What that does is that tilts the upender into an upright angle so that we can set a rod inside the upender. Once we move a rod inside the upender, we're of course going to be laying it down, and then we're going to be moving it out via the conveyor to the next room over. Alrighty, so everything is set up for us to start removing these spent fuel rods. Alrighty, we're going to come on back over here to our containment fuel handling platform. We're going to go ahead and move to the RPV position. Alrighty, we're in standby. So our next step, we're going to be going ahead and mapping out our fuel rods locations using the RPV map code. And you can go ahead and swap to the mapping screen while it's running this command, and you'll get to see it in live view, updating the locations of the fuel rods. Alright, as you can see, it told us our quadrant run 1 was successfully mapped, so it's moving on to quadrant 2. So during this process, it will go through all 4 quadrants where it houses fuel rods. Keep in mind there are only 4. When you're moving fuel rods, storing fuel rods, or refreshing your fuel rods, you're only going to have 4. Alright, mapping is now complete. Now we have quadrants 1 through 4 successfully mapped, which will allow us to move on to our next step. Once it returns to its standby position, we're going to be going ahead and extracting our spent fuel rods. Alright, now that we're in standby mode, we're going to go ahead and move over to the RPV quadrant or Q1 position. It makes sense to start on the first one of 4 so you don't lose your place as you're moving these spent fuel rods. So let's go ahead and move on over. All right, in standby mode above Q1, we're going to go ahead and extract our spent rod load. And you can watch as it goes ahead and lowers itself to extract Q1. Alrighty, now we're in standby. We have our spent fuel rod from Q1 in tow. You can tell because your load value has gone up from 0 to now being 0.2 tons, telling you that you are carrying something with this piece of gear. So next we're going to have to go ahead and move to the upender position. We already have everything in tow, so we're going to be moving on over. The upender is what allows us to transfer the fuel rods between this room and the next room, which is where we're going to be either storing them or grabbing new fresh ones. So go ahead and let this go over to the upender. All right, our next step is going to be to deposit the spent fuel rod that we are currently holding. But before we do that, we need to go over and verify our upender is up and it is in this current room. So in and up. Once that's in place, you can go ahead and deposit your load, which is going to deposit the Q1 spent fuel rod that we picked up earlier. The upender is used to move rods both spent and fresh between the reactor containment and the spent fuel pool. So you have to make sure that the upender is in the correct position if you're trying to deposit or if you're trying to extract fuel rods. Alrighty, we are in standby. So that means our spent rod is currently inside of the upender. Our next step is going to be to lower the upender into the down position so that it can be transferred to the room next door. So go ahead and wait for it to move to down, and then you're going to have to change the conveyor to the out position. This tells you that the conveyor housing our rod is currently moving to the next room. And you can verify this action with the lights. So currently we are in the out position. So now we can go ahead and move next door. This teleport brick is what will bring us to the spent fuel pool. And here we are. This is the spent fuel pool. If you can look down here in the water, this is where our upender currently is housing our rod. So there's a couple things we need to do in order to move this spent fuel to the correct pool. All right. We're going to come on over here to the spent fuel pool fuel handling platform. You're going to want to familiarize yourself with this piece of gear because this is where you're going to be using to grab your spent fuel, store it, and then grab your fresh fuel and move that back to the upender. All right. Our first move is going to be to go on over to the upender. And during this operation, we're going to go ahead and come on over here. Now that we're in position on the upender, you're going to have to go ahead and rotate your upender just like we did in the other room to the up position. Otherwise, you're not able to extract the fuel rods. And you can see it is currently in this room because we moved it on over here. Next, we're going to be going ahead and opening up Canal Gate 2. This is our spent fuel pool. We're going to want this open so we can go ahead and move our spent fuel over here and into here. And you can see we already have some spent fuel in pool number 1. There are a total of 6 pools. So pool number 1 is already occupied. We'll keep that in mind for later. All right, our upender is currently up, and we currently have our canal gate 2 open. So we can go ahead and extract our load. We're going to be going and extracting that spent fuel rod from the upender. Alrighty, our status is now standby, and you can see our load change from 0 to 0.2 tons. That tells us that we are carrying a spent fuel rod. We're going to go ahead and next, we're going to move on over to the spent pool. Alrighty, and like I said earlier, our cooling bay 1 currently is occupied, so we're going to go ahead and move on over to cooling bay 2. Alrighty, before we deposit the spent fuel rod, we're going to go on over here and verify that we currently are not occupied in the space of 2 that we're trying to put this down for storage. Looks good to me. So we're going to go ahead and deposit the load. Alrighty, we have successfully deposited our first of 4 spent fuel rods in the spent pool. Next, we're going to go ahead and return to the spent pool position. It will not allow you to directly move to the upender position without going to spent pool first, because we're currently in the cooling bay 2 position. So go ahead and move to the spent pool position. Alrighty, let's go ahead and move on over to the upender. Alright, we have completed our deposit of our first spent fuel rod that we extracted. Next, we're going to go ahead and lower down our upender so we can send it back over to the room next door. All right, it is down, so we're going to go ahead and move the conveyor so that the upender is moved to the room next door. You have to do these processes in each room. You cannot use the control panel in the opposite room while you're trying to interact with the upender in this room. So you have to be in the same room using the same upender controls in each room. All right, the upender has been successfully sent next door. Currently, we have nothing to extract here, so we have to go back over to the room next door and repeat the first step 3 more times. First, we're going to go ahead and make sure our upender is in the room, which it is, and we're going to set it to the up position. Next, we're going to go ahead and come back over here to the containment fuel handling platform, and we're going to return to the RPV position so that we can extract more fuel rods. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and move to our second RPV quadrant because we already went to quadrant 1 and removed that spent fuel rod. So now we're going to be going to quadrant 2 and removing the next fuel rod.
This is a routine test of the CEC alert notification system. Repeat. This is a routine test of the CEC.
All right, now for the sake of quickness of this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So just so you guys remember, you're going to be repeating the steps that I just showed you 4 times to extract all 4 of these spent rods. So you'll be going to each quadrant, extracting, then you'll be moving back on over to the upender over here, where you're going to make sure that the upender in this room is set to the up position. You're going to be then depositing the spent fuel rod that you just extracted into the upender. Then you'll lay the upender down, send it to the room next door. After that, you'll be repeating the steps that I showed you in the room next door. You'll be getting on the spent fuel pool fuel handling platform, and you're going to be extracting from the upender after you move it to the up position. Then you'll be moving to the spent pool in the cooling bays 2 through 6, because those are the available ones. You'll be depositing each load which is the spent fuel rods in your spent pool. I'm going to go ahead now and show you how to get fresh fuel rods, because with the tutorial I've given you, you should be able to successfully move all 4 spent fuel rods into storage. Alrighty, now we're going to be going ahead and getting some fresh fuel rods to move to our core. After you completed the last 4 steps, you should now have all 4 of your spent fuel rods in the storage area, and now you should be standing by for the next tutorial. So we're going to make sure that we have our upender in our room, which we do, and we're going to move it to the up position. We no longer need access to Canal 2, so we're going to go ahead and close that because that's our storage pool. We're going to go ahead and open Canal 3, which will open our fresh fuel bay. And you can see the difference between spent fuel, spent fuel, glowing blue, and fresh fuel, no glow, gray. That's very important. All right, Canal 3 is currently open and ready to go for extracting some fresh fuel. So we're going to go ahead and hop back on our equipment here. We're going to go on over and move to our refuel bay. All right, stand by, stand by. We're going to go ahead and extract, load, pick up that fresh fuel. Alrighty, we currently have in tow that fresh fuel rod, so we're going to go ahead and need to move to our upender so we can transfer it to the room next door, which houses the core. Keep in mind you need Canal Gate 3 open in order to carry this fresh fuel through, otherwise it'll be blocking your movement. Alright, well this is moving back over to the upender. We're going to go ahead and verify one more time that our upender is in the current room. It is, yes, and it is up. Has to be up in order to accept deposits. So now that we are in position, we're going to go ahead and deposit our fresh fuel rod load. Alrighty, we're back in standby, standby. That means we have successfully inserted our fresh fuel rod into the upender. So next, like before, we need to go ahead back over to our controls and lower down our upender. Once lowered, go ahead and move the upender via the conveyor to the room next door. Alrighty, you can see out is green, so we have moved our fresh rod to the room next door, and we can go ahead and move back over there. Alright, we're going to go ahead and move on over to the upender controls over here, first thing of course, and make sure that it is in this room and in the up position, because we're going to be extracting from it. You always go in the down position when switching between rooms, but when using, extracting, or depositing, you have to be in the up position in the current room that you're in. So we are in the up position. We know that we have one fresh fuel rod in there, so we're going to be extracting that fresh fuel rod. Alrighty, we have successfully extracted our fresh fuel rod from the upender. So we're going to go ahead and move on over to the RPV, which is the core, where we're going to need to deposit this new fuel rod. Now that we're in position, once again, we're going to move to one of the 4 quadrants. It makes sense to start on the first one so you don't lose your place while doing all 4. You're going to move to quadrant 1 to start. This is for the fresh fuel rod insertion process. We have to do all 4 that we previously removed and put in our spent fuel pool. Alrighty, we're currently standby, standby. So go ahead and deposit that fresh fuel rod into quadrant 1. Alright, you have successfully deposited 1 fresh fuel rod into your core. Q1 now has a fresh fuel rod. So you're going to need to repeat the steps I just showed you for Q2, 3, and 4. Remember, you're going to be moving this piece of gear over to the upender. You're going to be then lowering your upender and sending it to the other room. Then in the other room, you're going to be raising your upender, and then you're going to hop on your piece of gear in the other room, which if you remember correctly, then that's going to be called the spent fuel pool fuel handling platform. You're going to then move over to the refuel bay, extract another fuel rod, and then after you have another fuel rod in tow, go ahead and move back on over to the upender, deposit it in the upender, lower the upender, send it back on over here, and then you're going to repeat 4 times in total. So now with this knowledge, you should be able to successfully replace all 4 of the fuel rods that you extracted earlier with fresh ones. So next, I'm going to be showing you how to tidy up everything now that you have replaced all 4 of the spent fuel rods with the fresh fuel rods. You'll need to get it back to where you were so that it's in operational status. Alrighty, now that we have deposited our 4 fuel rods, we're going to go ahead and start the process of replacing our equipment and structures. Go ahead and come on over here. You're going to hop on your piece of gear in here, the containment fuel handling platform, and move to the yield hold position. Next, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our upender is pivoted in the down position. Alrighty. Then we're going to go ahead and cross our bridge over here. We're going to go ahead and close our fuel transfer tube lockout switch. Then we're going to come on over to the action lever, return that to normal, and the standby lever, return those to normal. That will close your fuel transfer tube. Next, we're going to come on over and drain the cavity. Alrighty, while that's draining, you can go ahead and go on up to your crane. Next, we'll be starting our crane operations once again. Alrighty, your crane should be in origin position so you can easily walk to it. You can see our water is still currently draining. That is okay. We're going to go ahead and move over to the eye has a boot position. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and secure our load. Looks like our water is fully drained down there, which is awesome. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and move over to our RPV IHAZA. And then we're going to go ahead and release the load. Alrighty, while that's running, let's go ahead on back down. We're going to come on over and open up our grate for the gate. Alrighty. Make sure your shield grate is open. Then you're going to come on over back here and return the containment fuel handling platform to the origin position. Alrighty. Now while that's moving, you can go ahead back on up to your crane. Alright, the task was successfully completed, so we're going to go ahead and move on. Now we're going to go to our shield cavity. Go ahead and secure your load. Alrighty, go ahead and move on over to your shield slot. Alrighty, next we're going to go ahead and hit release load. Alright, let's go ahead and move back on over to the origin position. Alright, go ahead and move over to the IHA boot position. We're going to go ahead and hop on out of our crane and head back down now. Got two things we need to do really quickly. We need to make sure to close our shield grates that we left open earlier. Then we need to come on over here and verify that all of our boots are currently open. For example, these would be closed. The boots are currently holding the IHA boot in place, so you need to make sure that you release all four. Otherwise, you won't be able to pick it up. Alrighty, all four are currently disengaged, so we can head back up to our crane, which is now in position. Alrighty, now we're going to go ahead and secure the load. Alright, next we're going to go move over to the RPV IHA position. Alrighty, go ahead and release the load. Alrighty, let's go ahead and return our polar plane to origin position. This will be the last step with our crane, returning it to its origin position. We can go ahead and dismount our crane. We are finished using it. Alright. Now we need to reconnect all four of the seismic restraints. Once all four seismic restraints are reattached, we're going to go ahead and lower down our maintenance bridges. The RPI, the lower maintenance bridge, and the CRDM cable bridge. Alright, once you verify all three bridges are indeed lowered, you're going to go ahead and do your final step in this whole process. You're going to connect your CRDM terminal, the control rod drive mechanism terminal. This is going to be the last step. Alrighty, now that the CDRM terminal is successfully connected, we have completed our refueling process. Let's go ahead and open up our phase 2 hatch once again. Alrighty, go ahead and head on back over to the clocking in and out terminals. Alrighty, go ahead and bring your ID up onto the terminal. And go ahead and hit clock out. Congratulations, you have successfully refueled the reactor, hopefully in a safe manner. Hopefully this tutorial helped you guys out. If you guys need to repeat any of the steps throughout the process, go ahead and rewind the video. If you made it this far, you have successfully completed the operation start to finish. Good job. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Catch you guys later.